Can you talk about your trauma on your med school personal statement? We have to break that down into two questions. Should you do it, and how do you do it if you decide that you should? The first question, we need to think about what med schools are actually looking for. Because one of the biggest ways to mess up your personal statement is making this giant trauma dump that really isn't pertinent to why med schools are reviewing your personal statement. First step in deciding whether it would be valuable to talk about those things is to determine whether there are clear lessons that you've learned from reflecting on them. Those lessons might be interesting to the med school, but the actual experience, the sorrow, the emotions, the hardship, that on its own is not. Now, let's say that you reflect on it and you've determined that there are some really formative lessons that are best spoken about by disclosure to some degree of something traumatic that's happened to you in the past. Next question we need to answer is, how do you mention it effectively? First thing we need to discuss is how show not tell applies to this. I want to be very clear that show not tell does not mean you should be talking about the details of your traumatic experiences. It's not about the sights, the smells, the sounds, and the specific emotions, because this is not a fantasy novel and it's not an autobiography. It's definitely not a journal entry. In the personal statement, show not tell means show them what you learned, show them why it mattered. Do that by focusing your paragraphs on those things. The thesis statements of those paragraphs should be the lessons, the insights, the stuff that actually matters. You only need to bring up the experience to the extent it's necessary to provide evidence for the claims you're making about those lessons learned. This might mean that the experience itself is only briefly touched on or is kind of vague. That's okay. It's not about making the experience the thesis. Like with anything else on the personal statement, it's about communicating why it matters.